Welcome to the first episode of Solid Principle course. In this episode, I want to talk about single responsibility and to tell you what is that and show you some real world example to understand the importance of these principles. So let's dive in. Single responsibility principle is telling us how to organize our code and putting our code in the right place. This principle should be followed in all levels of our project, from module level down to the function. So how? In module level, you need to pay attention and see what this module is included. Everything should be related to each other and not any random classes in this module. One level lower is classes. In the class level, we have to look into the code to see everything's related to each other, and this class has only one responsibility and not more. The other level is function. We have to make sure the function has only one responsibility to do and not more. When I'm saying one responsibility, it doesn't mean that level should have only one job. Instead, in that level, any job should relate to each other and should have a high level of cohesion. Now I would like to take you to a project environment to understand the single responsibility principle in action. This is the project I prepared for this Solid Principle course, and today I want to show you some example about single responsibility. The first example is about single responsibility in module level. In this project, we only have one module and it's called app, and all the implementation for this project is included in this module. If we open the main package, we see all the implementation related to this project are included in this module, and everything is one place, which violates the single responsibility principle, and we don't really like this approach, and we want to fix this to follow the single responsibility principle. So how? We need to create modules for each part. For example, this authentication service, login activity, login view model can be in a different module, and order activity, order service, order view model can be in a different module, and same for product list classes. I just created different modules for these classes, and now I need to move these classes into the relevant module. So we have authentication service, login activity, login view model. These are related to the authentication module, and we can move those classes into this package by just clicking them and dragging to this module. The next part is order activity, order service, order view model. We open the order module and we put them in the main package of this module. And the last part is product list. We want to move them to the catalog module, and same for this, moving to the main package. In this way, we follow single responsibility principle in module level. And as I said before, each level should have high cohesion, which means everything should relate to each other and not putting everything into one place. The next example of single responsibility is about class level. Here I have a repository class, it's called main repository. Let's review the code if we can find any violation of single responsibility. In the main repository, we have two functions. The first one is getUser. Within the getUser function, we have API service.getUser. It gives us a user response. From user response, we are creating a user object and storing user object in database, and at the end return the user. The next function is called getProductList. It uses API service and calling getProductList, and it returns list of product response. And here the next line, we're mapping the product response list into a new object, which is called product. And now we have a product list, first storing it into database and return the product list. Do you think this class has any violation of single responsibility? The answer is yes, and there are quite a lot. Let's find them and fix them one by one. There are some signs in the code which help you to find any violation of single responsibility. For example, in this case, the class called main repository. The name is quite generic and it doesn't indicate any functionality of our application, which is a sign of violation of single responsibility, having a big class which do everything. To fix this, we have to break down main repository class into more specific repository classes, which they are smaller and have only one responsibility. In this case, we can define two repository. One could be user repository and the other one product repository. And two other signs which get you to this root cause could be checking the dependency of this main repository class, which in this case we have user DAO and product DAO. These are not relevant, but they are depend on this main repository class. As we said, we have to breaking down to smaller classes. And one other sign in the code help you to find this kind of violation is checking the dependency of the class. In this case, we have user DAO, product DAO, an API service. It shows us this class has more than one responsibility and we need to fix it. The other issue I'm seeing in this class, which is a different responsibility, is the mapping. It's not very explicit, but you can see it. We are creating a new object here, and by mapping user response into a new object called user. Same for the product list. We are mapping product response list into a list of products. It could be a different responsibility and delegated to a different class. So let's see how we can fix this class to follow single responsibility. This is the solution. I created two different repository classes called one user repository and the other product repository. In the user repository class, we only use user DAO and not product DAO, which help us to reduce the responsibility of the class. As you see, the class is much simpler and easier to read and more maintainable. In the getUser function, as before, we have the API service.getUser to get the user response, and we are mapping the user response into user by making use of user mapper. This is a new class I defined to just having the mapping responsibility of user. This example is quite simple, but imagine if the user mapper could be a little bit more difficult and we need to write unit tests for that. It's very helpful to have a different mapper class. At least it helps us to write tests much easier. And same for product repository. It looked much simpler and easier to maintain. We define a product mapper as well to do the mapping of product response to product. This notification service class is another example I want to showcase single responsibility principle, and I want to show you first how it violates the single responsibility and how to fix this violation. So let's first review the code to find any violation. This class has three dependencies and there is a create notification public function. Within this function, we're calling another function called get or create notification channel. We get the channel ID and then we create an intent to pass the data, and we need a pending intent to build our notification object, and then we notify the user. And at the end, we are making an API call for any reason. Here we have implemented this function, the first one to create the notification channel, the second one to make the API call, and navigate to activity function which open the main activity. There are a few issues in notification service class which I would like to fix. I would like to delegate this task into another class, because as an Android developer, my application could have more than one channel, and I would like to give it to another class to manage all the channels I need for notifications. The next fix would be creating notification object and notifying user. Because my application could have different type of notification, I would like to delegate this part of code into another class as well. Then I can manage different type of notification in that class. The other fixes would be these two functions, navigate to activity. Instead of doing this, I would like to define a navigator class to do all these navigation stuff in there. And the last one, make API call function. I don't really want to launch a coroutine in my notification service class and do all these stuff in here. I would rather do it in, for example, in a repository class. So let's see the fixes. How do they look? This is the look of notification service class after fixes. Much simpler and easier to understand. So let's review the code to see how it looks like. First, look at the dependencies. I defined a notification channel manager. In that class, I delegated the task of creating notifications. In future, if I want to define a new notification channel for my application, I can only change this class instead of changing notification service. The next change is moving all the logic of creating notification object and notifying user. I created a class called notify manager, and in that class I have a function called notify with general notification. I create the notification object and notify the user. And later I can add more function to this class to support different type of notifications without touching notification service class. And to do the navigation logic, I create a navigator class and create a function called navigate to main activity and put those logic in this function and just simply calling it from the notification service class. And same for making API call logic. I create a user repository class and move all those logic into this function and simply call that from notification service. As you see, the result is so promising. At the end, I would like to mention one of the cool features of Kotlin language, which is called delegation, which help us to apply single responsibility principle even better. Let's have a look at this user setting class. It has defined two fields, username and notifications enable. It cached those data and read those cache value with shared preferences. Quite simple. I would like to apply delegation to this class, which Kotlin provided. So what does delegation do for us in this case? I want to use parameter delegation and delegate these getter and setter logic into that in an efficient way. This is the way I meant. I defined a class, and within that class I have two functions. Get value function wrap getter implementation, and set value is setter. And since we are using shared preferences, I wanted to make it more generic to support different types. Anyway, it does the same job as before. So how to use that? This is the way of using delegation in Kotlin. When you define your parameter, you add the by keyword and then delegated class. That was all about single responsibility principle. Hope you find it useful. If so, please like this video and subscribe to the Otaku channel.